Hey there, welcome to the Houseplant Coach podcast. This is Veronica with Oh Happy Plants, and today I wanted to share just a little bit about moss poles. And I think I've probably said this before, but I keep seeing this stuff pop up in groups, so I wanted to share my experience with moss poles and just kind of like we've all seen those videos and pictures of people with insanely huge leaves on their moss poles. And then I see people using like the cocoa fiber poles. Like it's the same kind of fiber that people use to line baskets, like hanging baskets. And then they're like, why isn't my Monstera attaching to this? You know, they use it as a plant stake. So I want to have a little chat about the difference between a stake and a pole and how you can encourage your plants to be really good strippers. That's what this is about, right? To go pole dancing, you know. So first, though, I wanted to give you guys a little heads up, and I'm running a sale on, well, it's kind of like a buy one, get something sort of situation, on soils, because earlier this year, I think it was February, maybe March, I ran a sale on the 2-gallon bags of soil, and I was not intending to do another sale like that. But honestly, I think that it's time for, some repotting nonsense for everybody, because if you're anything like me right now, my plants, they've grown so much because the light is so good that they are now either in need of larger pots, or some of them need a slightly more water retentive mix if I want to keep them in the small pots that they're in. And so if you need to change out some dirt, it's a really good time to in the month of August and even into September, so that they can continue to have access to the really good light. Like if you're up in the northern climes and your light is gonna suck this winter, like mine, because I'm up near Seattle in Tacoma, Washington. So our light, like the sun goes down at 4 p.m. in the wintertime, in the darkest months. It's terrible. So instead of waiting until November to repot, if you're up in this area, it's a really good idea to do that now. And if you're down south, then you probably don't have to worry about that too much. So I wanted to go ahead and run a little bit of a sale, because there's plenty of time for your plants to use all of this glorious light to regrow their root systems after you repot them and start growing again before they need to hunker down and slow their growth for the wintertime. So the sale, I think it just shows up automatically. Let me check that really fast. Hang on. Okay, yes, it shows up automatically. All you have to do is add $100 worth of soil to your cart and then the 3-part Hungry Plant system. And it is only the 3-part system, not the 3 bottles, not the 5-part system, the 3-part Hungry Plant system. It's 3 bottles of the liquid thing that we shall not use a proper term for because it's not registered with the state. And so I can't make any claims on this, but this is the stuff that I use at home, and my plants fucking love it. So if you want to know what products I use, it's all of the stuff that's on the website. So if you go to ohhappyplants.shop and you add $100 of soil, it can be any types of soil. It's anything in the soil tab. $100 of the premixed soils, or the dry soils even. And I believe even the 10-gallon batches count. So if you need 10 gallons of something, there's your $100 right there. And then add the Hungry Plant system, the 3-part system, to your cart. The 3-part Hungry Plant system, it's a $37 value. It's free with your order of $100 of soil. So if you are looking to, if you want to try this out, the Hungry Plant system, if you never have before, if you are currently not using anything in liquid form in your watering can, if you're not giving your plants anything that would satisfy their hunger, let's say, and you're just relying on spent soil, and you don't honestly, okay, sorry, rant time. I have heard of professionals who insist that repotting your plant every 6 months is the way to feed it. This is so disruptive to the roots of the plant. Like, use a liquid fertilizer, guys. Come on. You don't need to do that. And no, plants don't get root bound every 6 months either. You know, if your plants are getting root bound every 6 months, like, number one, is it really root bound? Because probably not. And number two, if it properly is, then it may be a plant that you just don't need to worry about it being so root bound. I feel like people see roots at the edge of the pot and they assume it's root bound. Root bound is when you can't put your finger into the root ball. That's root bound. And it doesn't actually negatively impact the plant necessarily. Hoyas will bloom when they're super root bound, more frequently than not. If a Hoya has a ton of space in the pot, sometimes it won't be blooming. Sometimes they need a little bit of stress because then they're like, oh shit, I'm out of soil here. Because a lot of these are epiphytes or semi-epiphytic, you know, they're climbing up the trunk of a tree. So if they're like, crap, I am out of tree trunk, I better throw some seeds on the ground. Like, what do you think is going on in there? Think about the plant's behavior. and think about, like, do you want it to bloom or do you want it to be focusing on leaf growth? So if you're trying to propagate plants from your Hoya, then you want it to focus on growing leaves and growing more vines, you know, and you don't want it to focus on blooming. So go ahead and increase the pot size. But if you're freaking out because it's root bound, but you're also like, you know, and you repot it all the time, or, you know, more than once a year, or even more than once every 3 years or something, and you're like, why is this never blooming? That might be why. So number one, don't repot your plants if you don't have to. Number two, I think I've put a whole episode together and probably other information too. The reason to repot your plants is because you're watering too frequently and you need to either change the pot, like this terracotta pot with this begonia in it over here. The begonia has gotten massive and now terracotta is no longer the solution for that plant. I'm looking at it right now and no, I haven't changed it yet, but one of these days I will, because that thing needs watering like 3 times a week and I'm sick of it. So if you are tired of your plants' shit, then it's time to repot. If they are requiring too much attention from you and you just can't keep up, it's time to repot, because you deserve to have happy plants around you. Your plants deserve to have somebody who can keep up with their care. And if you're just not able to do it, then it's time to repot. And I know that that's adding more work, but it's a solution ultimately. I know it takes a little time though. So also, by the way, no judgment ever. If your plants are wilting right now, we all have shit going on and I get it. Out of anyone on this earth, I probably get it more than anybody else. So, okay. Repotting is if you're finding you're watering way too frequently, if the plant is literally like way too large for its pot, if the foliage, the amount of foliage up top outweighs the amount of water that the soil can hold, that's another reason. Or if it's literally breaking its pot in half. Sansevierias will do this, ZZ plants will do this, plenty of plants will do this. That is, you know, generally seen as a problem. If the pot has busted, if the plastic pot or whatever has broken in half, then yeah, it probably, like, when you water it, the water's going to fall out on your floor. That's a problem, right? So those are the times that you need to repot. Or if the plant is actively unhappy, but again, see point number 1 of you can't keep it watered frequently enough. So the other piece, if the foliage is huge, it's not crazy root bound, but it's slurping up every bit of water that you put in, you may just need to pop it out of the terracotta pot if it's in one and put it in a plastic one. Or you might need to just like add a wick system or some kind of thing like that, some kind of sub-irrigation, because that can solve your problem too. If it doesn't actually need more soil, if it doesn't actually need a bigger pot because the roots are not like out of hand or anything like that, then you could just shove some wicks up in there, like literally with like a pair of scissors or a chopstick, just jam them up in the soil, create a space for a reservoir down below. So get a really deep saucer, and I carry all of these at ohhappyplants.shop on the website, and we ship to anywhere in the USA. So So go ahead and take a look there if you want to see what I'm looking at. I know there are a lot of different materials for wicks, and like I've seen people use like cotton string too, and that kind of works, but honestly, it's not going to work as good as the wicks that I have listed because they're a lot thicker and they're going to, there's more, it's like a highway versus a tiny little dirt road for the water to travel on up the thing with the, I'm not going to get into hydrogen bonds and the physics of water molecules right now. But anyway, it's faster, it's easier. The wick is less likely to dry out in between, however far you have it away from the water reservoir. It's less likely to dry out if it's a thicker wick and holds more water, basically. So they're just going to work better. And especially if it's a really thirsty plant that's like actively slurping up that water, it's going to work a lot better. So anyway, installing a wick system, you want to have a reservoir, which means you need to prop the plant up off of the bottom of the saucer to allow the wicks to dangle down into the space that has, like, it does not have the pot sitting in there. You don't want it sitting in the puddle. You want the wicks in the puddle, and you want the pot up out of the water. I do have some, like, saucer inserts listed on the website. I'm going to be starting to make wooden ones that I'm going to seal eventually. I actually just set up my router table today, so maybe that'll be sooner than later. I can make different sized ones, and I'll seal them so they're watertight, and I'm going to use natural materials because the ones I have on my website right now are plastic, and that bothers me to no end. I don't have a solution aside from buying closed bottom ceramic pots or using like a bit of epoxy or something like that, epoxy putty, to using plastic saucers. I don't have a solution for that yet. But if you're one of those people who buys a ceramic pot and the bottom is closed and you're like, oh, this is terrible, it's not for indoor plants, and you drill a hole in the bottom, like, and then you put it in a plastic saucer, just like literally, because when you buy a plant at the store, it already comes in a nursery pot, right? So just like set the nursery pot inside of the ceramic pot, and then you don't need to throw that nursery pot away, number one. And because, I mean, how many of us are actually washing those and recycling them? Because they have to be washed first. They can't be thrown in the recycling covered in dirt. And you're not going to be buying an additional saucer to use in like the ugliest of ways underneath the ceramic pot. And it'll protect your furniture. So killing how many birds was that with one stone? A bunch of them. Okay. So reservoirs, changing out a ceramic pot for plastic or not ceramic, but like a terracotta pot, because have I talked about this? Sorry, I'm all over the place right now. If I have not mentioned the porosity of a low fire clay like terracotta versus a high fire clay like the stoneware ceramic pots that we see, high fired clays are fired at a temperature that vitrifies the ceramic, the clay. And what that means is it melts it just enough so that it doesn't like run all over the kiln and screw everything up. But it melts it just enough so it essentially turns the ceramic, the silica in there, the silica and the alumina in the clay will fuse together at a high enough temperature, and they will make it so the clay body is no longer porous, so water can't get through. And terracotta is traditionally fired at a lower temperature, so it is porous. And that's the whole point of terracotta pottery, is that the moisture from the soil can just evaporate out through the sides. So if you have a plant that is really, really prone to overwatering issues, and by that I mean like, I hate the term overwatering, but if you have a plant that gets root rot really often because maybe it's in the wrong soil, or maybe it came to you with fungal pathogens that cause root rot, like Pythium or something like that, it's a good idea to let it dry thoroughly between waterings, and a terracotta pot can help you with that because it's going to dry out through the sides of the pot, not just the soil surface on top. So it's not going to maintain a really wet layer down below because only the surface is able to access air. All of the sides will evaporate too. So it'll kind of dry more evenly, and drying out and then re-wetting the soil in a faster cycle can help to keep pathogens down, because it's, less time where the pathogen can actually populate, because they need water to be able to populate and breed. And I know it's not really properly breeding. It's something else with those little guys because they're fungi. But anyway, hi, Drumstick. Drumstick is my Dobie dog, and he's really cute. And he's like, Mom, make the temperature go down outside. You could do that, right? He really doesn't know why I can't turn the rain off, because I can do that in the bathroom with the shower, but I can't turn the rain off outside. And it's like, clearly I'm not trying hard enough. Right, Drummy? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, repotting. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Repotting is not always necessary. So I fully encourage you to not repot your plants if you don't need to. If you want to take advantage of the sale, and again, this is buy $100 worth of whatever soils, including the dry soils, and then you get the 3-part Hungry Plant system for free. Just add it all to your cart, and it should come off automatically if you've done it right. If you have added things to your cart and you don't see the Hungry Plant system for free, then number one, check your amount of the soil that you added. Make sure the soil itself, with no tax and not the Hungry Plant system, none of that, the soil itself needs to add up to $100. And then make sure you've also added the correct 3-part Hungry Plant system. And again, soil, add soil to $100 before tax, before shipping, all of that. And then also add the 3-part Hungry Plant system. Because if you don't add that to your cart, then it can't come off either. So, and I won't know to include it, And I am only running this sale for podcast people and people who follow Oh Happy Plants in the other fancy special ways. So if you're actively following us on Facebook, you'll see it. If you're actively following us on Instagram, you'll see it. If you are in the member site, I'm going to send out an email about it and post about it. And where's the other thing? If you're on the email list, I'm going to email about it. So you may see this multiple times. And if you do, I apologize, or maybe it's a helpful reminder. And if you're not in any of those places, then you're listening to it here. So this is the reminder. But I'm not running this sale, I'm not promoting it. I'm not posting it in a million groups or anything like that. I may post it in a couple of the local groups just because the folks here locally have really helped me build this. But aside from that, I'm not going to be talking about it. And it does run until, I want to say I put it until August 20th, I think. So it's more than 2 weeks. And so if you want to get in on this, then go ahead and take advantage. But I'm not going to be talking about this really widely. And so that's, you just have to add the right things to your cart. If you are having problems, there is a chat function on the website. Just click on that. Just know that sometimes I'm not always near my phone, so I might not answer right away. Usually, honestly, I don't answer right away. And because I am the person who runs this company, I have to sleep too. And eat and walk my dog and feed my kid and, hang out with him and all of those things and have a life aside from the business. So I can't be tied to my phone, but I will get back to you in I think I have 24 to 48 hours as the grace period. And typically I don't work on weekends, but I do answer my chats on weekends. And so just go ahead and shoot a chat through and just make sure you put your email in that box and you'll get a response in your email. Okay. So that's the announcement there. So as far as moss poles, I actually have a favorite pole that I'm going to start selling on my shop, and it's going to come with everything that you need for it, except for some packing tape, because that's actually what I found out works best for anchoring these into the pots. Either packing tape, if you're going to put it on the outside of the pot, and then just attach the plant in the pot to it, or, and I'll show you, I'll make a video about this or something, or an Instagram or Facebook reel or something, to show how I attach these. But either you put them on the outside and attach with packing tape, or you can put them on the inside of the pot. And again, I use, for the vast majority of my plants, I use nursery pots inside of a ceramic pot, like a decorative cache pot. So the nursery pot, I will actually drill a little hole through with something pokey and whatever thing I have close to me, stab it with a pen, whatever. Don't stab yourself, PSA. And then I will cut a little hole in the pole itself, and I will attach those together with a twist tie. And that holds it really well. And then these poles you can also stack. And if you need additional, like as you're stacking them, if you need additional support, you can always jam like a bamboo stake down in them or something like that to really attach them together. Otherwise, you can just tape them together, like literally right where they meet. So I am going to have these poles available. And the reason that I use these are because, number one, they're filled with sphagnum instead of being that cocoa coir stuff that I mentioned at the beginning, I think. It's a cocoa fiber. Like, cocoa coir is great, but the cocoa fiber that they use to line like hanging baskets and things like that, you've seen those sheets of it. They also will use it to wrap around a stick, and then they call it a pole for your plant. Poles are for climbing. This is not a pole, because your plant will not climb it, because guess what? It doesn't really absorb water very well. And the trigger for root growth is moisture. So if you do not have a damp pole, yes, let's just go with the innuendo. If you don't have a damp pole, nobody's going to want to climb it. It's just the truth. So just remember that plants are very sexual beings, but they're also very intelligent, and they know that if it's not wet, they don't want anything to do with it. I'm just going to leave that alone now. Anyway, so root growth is triggered by moisture. So if you are spraying down your cocoa coir, whatever thing, like, yeah, okay, it's a little bit wet, the roots might attach to it, and you're going to have to do that every freaking day. And I do not have the time for that in the slightest. And if you do, then power to you, keep doing what you're doing. And if you don't care about the roots attaching and you just want to get the plant up out of your way, that's fine. I would argue that you could use a piece of wood, like a stick from outside, instead of spending any kind of money on a pole that's wrapped in cocoa, especially because I don't find them very attractive. I have so many ideas for like fancy moss poles, but I have not found one that I like the look of very much yet. I just like the look of the plant, honestly. So I try to cover it as much as possible in plant leaves and then call it good. But anyway, so these, like, you know, I don't feel like they look great either, but they do the job better than anything else that I've found. And if you cover it with enough vines of plant, then eventually the leaves will cover it too. So anyway, so these poles, they are plastic, which another thing that I absolutely can't stand, but somehow I am. And the saving grace is that they have sphagnum inside, and it soaks up so much water that you only have to water them maybe every week. And then you can soak the sphagnum so much, and the excess water will drain down into your pot or into your saucer, depending on how you have it set up. And then the plant, if you have it on a wick system, the plant can drink that as well. So this is, when you see those plants that are climbing up a pole on Instagram, I think it's, who is it, Sydney Plant Guy or something like that? Go follow him if you want to see some monsters, and he's really cute too. So like, if you're into men, his plants are like, they are insane. They are ridiculously huge, and he clearly has great light, and he also clearly has, you know, has had the time to grow these beasts too, in terms of properly caring for the whole plant instead of just watering the soil and you know, leaving the pole dry. He doesn't do that. So one of the things that you can do with the pole also is, whenever you're mixing up your fertilizer water, make sure you use that up there too. Don't just put plain water up the pole. Add fertilizer too, because that's going to give the whole plant what it needs, instead of just giving, you know, I mean, nutrients are mobile. When they're sucked up through the roots, they are mobile, and they move throughout the plant and go where they need to go, especially when it comes to growing new leaves. It's going to go straight up to the top. But if you're watering with a nutrient solution at the bottom only, and you're watering the pole with plain water, the plant is still going to take up the same amount of water, because it takes up what it needs, right? And so that means that whatever solution that you watered with down below would have to be like 2 or 3 times as strong, because it's taking up more water up along the pole too, and it'll all get mixed together. So if you just like solve that issue by watering the whole thing with the same dilute nutrient solution, then you're not going to end up with an overabundance of salts in your soil. Okay. Because eventually the salt will crystallize, the fertilizer will crystallize down in the soil and not dissolve as well and get all stuck. And that's when you see fertilizer burn and stuff like that, root burn and stuff. So water your whole pole, make sure it stays damp, and make sure you're using whatever nutrient solution that you use. And again, I recommend watering every single time you water using something, some kind of fertilizer in your water, if that's how you fertilize. You can use other things like I have all the things like the habitat blends that you mix into the soil, the bug shit, all of those things. You can use those for sure. But I find that it's the easiest, for me at least, with my crazy ADHD nonsense brain, to just, I keep, like, it's literally a ketchup bottle that I think I got from, I don't know, I think like the US Chef store or maybe Amazon or something. It's one of those ketchup squirt bottles. It's a clear bottle. And I have measured how much just a tiny little, like, turn it over and turn it back up, right? I've measured how much that is. So I have the right amount of fertilizer going into my watering can, and it's a very dilute amount, so I'm not in danger of over-fertilizing. And I leave that by my sink, and I just use it every single time. And my kid knows that it's not soy sauce. So I use it with every watering, like no matter what. I do not skip one. I don't skip it through the winter because come spring, my plants, I mean, honestly, I have so many grow lights in my house that my plants grow through the winter anyways. So anyway, I use it all the time because then I'm not like, oh, once a month I water. And so that's like the first Friday of every month, because then I would have to remember, like, oh, it's August now, instead of like not understand, like having no concept of why the fuck is it August right now? Like summer only just started. Are you feeling that too? Because I'm really feeling that right now. So instead of forcing myself to remember shit or setting more calendar reminders on top of all of the other calendar reminders that I have, like literally ADHD brain requires all of the alarms in the world. So instead of doing that, I just have a habit where I do it every single day. Like I brush my teeth multiple times a day. That's not a negotiable thing. I put fertilizer in the watering can every time I fill it up. If the fertilizer bottle is empty, then it bothers me until I fill it again. Every time I water, it bothers me. And I rarely make it through a whole cycle of watering. So that's how much it bothers me. Because I'm like, oh, I'm neglecting my plants. Anyway, moss poles. If you don't water them, long story short, if you don't water the pole, number one, your plants are not going to root to it. Number two, the leaves are not going to get much bigger. It's not going to do shit. It's going to be the same as this plant was, it's just going to grow along the ground. I have, God, what is that? It's some kind of philodendron. Is it a varicosum? I think so. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And it's growing up this pole, and the leaves just keep getting bigger and bigger. And I want them to be bigger than my head. They will be soon, I think. But I do actually need to add another pole to the top of that because it's going fucking nuts. So do that. Don't get the poles that are wrapped in cocoa because they just don't hold as much water. I think that they have some kind of a waxiness to them, it feels like, because they just don't really absorb water. They don't even absorb water as much as the cocoa chips that I have. And it makes me wonder if the outside of the coconut shell is, if that's the part they use because it's so hairy. I don't know. Or if they process it somehow. Because it just doesn't really absorb water very well. Like, it's porous. Water goes through it. But, so it won't hold water, but it doesn't seem to really absorb it up. Which is, not the point. The point of a moss pole is to act like a tree trunk that just got blasted with torrential tropical rain. The actual trunk will absorb some water. The bark will absorb some water. There will be little, droplets sitting in the pockets in the bark. The little divots and irregularities in texture on the side of that tree that your Hoya or your Monstera or whatever the hell is growing up. There's little pockets of water all in there. And there's also humidity in the air. And I really hope for your sake that your home's humidity is not 99% right now, because that would suck. So my humidity is probably, I don't know, like 50% right now or something like that. So that's like tolerable. And your plants would love it if it was 99% humidity, but I don't want to walk around feeling like I'm standing in a swimming pool. So sorry, guys, moss poles it is. Anyway, that is all for today. I'm going to stop talking because that's 30 minutes of nonsense already. I'm going to remind you again that if you go to ohhappyplants.shop and you need soil, you can also buy dry soil that lasts indefinitely. It is totally dry. Everything is in the bag. Like if you buy 2 bags, if you buy a bag of Tropical Climber and a bag of the Turbo Mix, then you take the bag of Tropical Climber, literally just pour the whole thing into a bowl, and then fish out the packet of goodies and the cocoa cookies. There are 2 in the Tropical Climber. There is one in most of the other mixes, but there's 2 occasionally. So there's 1 or 2 of these cocoa cookies. You'll be able to find them really easy. The cocoa chips are usually in a chunk. Just break those up with your hands. You can soak them in water to make it easier too. And then just mix all that shit together. Soak the cocoa cookies, obviously, and, let them absorb water and then break them up. Hot water works a lot better. It works faster. Don't pour boiling water on your plants. Don't pour it on your hands. If you pour boiling water on your cocoa cookies, make sure it's not in a plastic tub or on a glass surface or anything like be careful, use your common sense. And also don't break it up with your hands until it's cool. I think that is obvious also, but hot water works better. It doesn't have to be boiling, but even just warm water will make the cocoa cookies fluff up a lot faster, and then just break them up with your hands. Make sure you're adding the packet of dry Tasties to something wet so it doesn't get super dusty all up in your face, and mix it all together and you have fresh soil. And so if you need to do some repotting in 3 months and you want to stock up on the dry soil right now, you can do that. And again, if you spend $100 of soil, then make sure you add the Hungry Plant system, the 3-part system, to your cart, and then that will be free. And that's a $37 value. So ultimately, what is that? Like 30% off all those products, at least? It's not 40% off. It's like $37 free when you buy 100. So anyway, I hope your August is starting off well. And I'm just out here getting my garage organized and working on projects. And life has been chugging along quite nicely. So, yeah, things are going well. And I do want to mention that a lot of people have reached out, recently and ages ago. And it is so, so meaningful to me that people have reached out when they heard that Sean died, and just that I got so much support from this beautiful little community that we have here, and the broader houseplant community. It seems like plant people, for the most part, are really, really amazing folks. And so keep it up with your amazing self. And I hope that you're getting whatever support that you need as well, because we all need support and we all need community. And I think it's really important that we give that to each other. So thank you for being there when I was going through all of that. And also, I've gotten a lot of messages about how my openness about the experience has really helped other people with their own grief, even their own grief that, say somebody died years ago and they just hadn't finished processing it yet. And hearing about my experience brought a lot up for them in a helpful way. That's the majority of the feedback that I've gotten. And so I just wanted to mention that if you are going through something, or if you do in the future, the whole point of me sharing is because I don't feel like any of us are ever prepared for losing someone because no one talks about it, because we would like to avoid the fact that we're all going to die one day. And the more we talk about it when we're experiencing something like that, the more normal it's going to be, you know? Even though it's completely not normal when someone, I mean, it feels like a person blinks off the face of the earth. It's super, super weird. It's the strangest experience and the most impossible to comprehend because it's a whole ass person, you know? But we don't, like, no one ever said that to me before Sean died. That specific thing. And I think until, I mean, I've experienced other deaths, but not someone that close who was intertwined with my, I mean, you know, intertwined with my breathing. Never somebody that close before. And I don't think it's an experience that can really be truly understood until you have it. But if we talk about things more, then maybe some of this shit wouldn't be so much of a surprise. So I would really, really, with all of my heart, encourage you to whatever degree you're able to, whatever degree feels right. Because when you're in an experience like that, you don't need another job. So let me stress that first and foremost. But if you have the capacity to, and especially if it would be healing to you to talk about grief as you're experiencing it, and even to describe what it's like in the moment to whoever is around you that you feel comfortable sharing with, it will help them. Because we don't talk about this stuff enough. And avoidance is not the way to build any kind of strength or resilience. And avoidance is what we do as a society with grief. And it's just not working. So I would really, really deeply encourage you to share with people as much as possible. And like, even I've had experiences of people like going through a divorce and being surprised that there's grief in that, you know? And it's the death of a relationship, you know? And it's the death of the partner that you thought you had, or the person that you were trying to be, or whatever. So like there's all sorts of little deaths all around us all the time. And I think that the knee-jerk reaction is to ignore them and to not give them a place in our psyche in terms of processing through things and sorting out our feelings. And not talking about stuff is such a huge piece of that. So share. You know, sharing builds community. Sharing feels really vulnerable, and vulnerability builds connection. So, yeah, that's all. I appreciate you guys so, so much. And it's, I mean, I don't know. It's possible to heal too, you know, as much as I guess is actually possible, you know, that whole, it's always going to hurt and you're going to learn how to truly live again. Like, those two things don't have to be exclusive of each other. So if you're in something right now, there is a way to the other side of it. Just keep the knowledge that you're going to carry it with you also. It's just such a weird thing. Anyway, I'm done. I hope everybody is having a lovely August. And I'm going to take this creature right here. I have to use careful language, and we're going to go on a ramble. Go find some woods somewhere. So I hope you have a really wonderful Saturday. And again, this sale is on for at least 2 weeks. I've forgotten if it ends the 20th or the 23rd. So let's just assume it's the 20th to be on the safe side. And this is August 2024 if you're listening to this episode later. Today is August 3rd. It just started today. And again, add $100 of products to your cart. Soil specifically to your cart, and also add the 3-part hungry plant system, and that will come off for free. And it is automatic. There's no code because I don't like fucking with codes myself, so I'm not going to make you do it. So that is all. And if you want to get to the member site, that is where you can ask me questions about plants directly. I try to get in there at least once a month to answer them, and I am working on doing an actual in-person live video once in a while. I have not started doing that yet. I want to start as soon as possible. But I have a few other things to work out first. And so if you want to join that, it's at members.ohappyplants.online. If you want to go to the website for soils and whatnot, that's ohappyplants.shop. If you want more episodes of this podcast, you're already listening to it. You know it's the Houseplant Coach. And if you want to find me on Facebook, I'm over there too. And I will probably be doing lives over there. It's just Oh Happy Plants on Facebook. Feel free to go over and say hi. Have a great day, guys. Bye.